If you'd asked me how life was going back then, I'd have probably said, not bad. I had a stable job, a house I renovated myself, and a wife who, by all outward accounts, was charming, witty, and loyal. At least, that's what I told myself. You know how hindsight works. It doesn't whisper. It shouts. Rachel had started coming home late. New perfume. Changed her phone passcode. Normal stuff in a thriller movie. In real life, you just assume people are tired or reinventing themselves. Self-care, right? I tried not to be the paranoid husband. Tried to believe we were just going through a rough patch. The irony? I thought that made me mature. Understanding. Turns out it just made me naive. The bomb dropped at a charity gala. Her boss, Greg, strode up to me with a martini in one hand and the kind of smirk that made you want to disinfect your soul. He clinked his glass against mine and said, "Congratulations, Ben. You're gonna be a father. I knocked up your wife." Now, I want to be very clear. I didn't respond right away. Not because I was stunned, though. Jesus, I was, but because I genuinely thought I misheard him. I turned to Rachel, expecting a laugh, maybe an awkward smile. But no, she just gave me that smug little look I'd started to hate over the last few months. "Yeah," she said, "and you won't even divorce me. No-fault dissolution of marriage, remember? That's betrayal. It doesn't slap you. It seeps in, like a leak you don't notice until your entire house is crooked." I didn't scream. I didn't throw my drink. I just smiled, nodded once. Then I walked out to the valet stand. Not to leave, just to grab something from the glove box of my truck. When I came back in, the music had changed, something jazzy, almost romantic. People were laughing, dancing, clinking glasses like the world wasn't unraveling. Rachel and Greg stood at the bar, sipping drinks like nothing happened. Then they saw me. Rachel's face shifted. She wasn't smiling now. Greg's brows pulled together. "Ben," she said, suddenly soft, "don't do this." She didn't know what I had in my hand. Just an envelope. Plain, thick. The kind you see in legal dramas. I dropped it on the bar next to her cocktail. "Read," I said. She didn't move. So I looked at Greg. "Your resignation letter." He laughed. "You're not serious." I was. And Rachel knew it the second she unfolded the first page. Her hands trembled. Her face lost all color. "What is this?" she whispered. "Proof," I said, "of the affair. The misuse of company funds. And a few other treats I've been gathering." Greg's face went from smug to panic red. "How the hell did you?" "Rookie move," I cut him off. "Don't share an iCloud account with someone you're cheating on." The room didn't erupt, but it shifted. The kind of silence that carries weight. Even the band stopped playing. "I already filed," I said. "Dissolution, asset protection, prenup enforcement. All done." Rachel reached out like she wanted to touch my arm. "Ben, wait." "I'm not waiting anymore." Then I pulled out my phone, tapped the screen, and like clockwork, the ballroom projectors flickered on. The video started with texts, moved to photos, then hotel receipts. Timestamped. Damning. Greg shirtless, Rachel in lingerie. Audio clips too. I turned back to them. "Consider this my resignation. From this marriage. From being the guy you walk over." And I left. Just like that. No yelling. No fighting. Just a man who finally saw the fire and decided to walk through it instead of wait to be burned. I didn't go home that night. I didn't even drive far. Just parked under the glow of a streetlight 3 blocks from the gala and sat there for 2 hours. The adrenaline wore off and left this numb, heavy silence in its place. No music, no calls, no anger. Just breathing and the low hum of a diesel engine somewhere in the distance. Around midnight, I checked into a cheap hotel off the interstate. No luggage. Just my truck, my wallet, and a USB drive full of damning evidence. At the front desk, the clerk didn't ask questions. Just handed me a key card like I looked exactly like the kind of guy who needed not to be asked anything. The next morning, Rachel left a voicemail. Her voice had that fake softness again, like cotton over broken glass. "Ben, I think we should talk. I know you're hurt. I never meant for it to happen this way." "Sure you didn't." Then Greg called. His tone was different. Angry, defensive. "You made a mistake coming after me. I can fix this." "Don't be stupid." "Fix this?" The man had knocked up my wife and bragged about it over cocktails. I didn't call back. I spent the day moving everything that mattered into legal orbit. Escrow account for shared funds. Locks changed on the house. My lawyer, Monica, filed a cease and desist against Greg for workplace misconduct. He was technically Rachel's superior, which meant I had leverage. Enough to trigger a corporate investigation if I dropped the right emails in the right inbox. And I did. The company's ethics hotline got an anonymous submission, with timestamps, with receipts, with hotel room numbers billed to a corporate card still under my name. Within 48 hours, Rachel's work was on fire. HR contacted her for a sensitive conduct review. Greg? He was placed on temporary leave. And suddenly, the power couple wasn't so powerful anymore. She showed up at the house 2 days later. Bangs on the door, mascara smeared like she finally remembered how to cry. Ben, please, just let me talk. I opened the door, let the screen separate us. You don't live here anymore. Her voice cracked. They're suspending Greg. You don't know what this is doing to me. Oh, I do. You gave him a baby. I gave him a probation review. She flinched. I didn't enjoy it. Not really. But justice, even poetic, has a sting to it. Then came the line I'd been waiting for. We made a mistake. I crossed my arms. Which part? The affair? The public announcement? Or thinking I wouldn't do anything about it? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. You ever notice how people scatter when the truth walks in? That week, my silence did more damage than any loud confrontation ever could. Rachel's social circle, the brunch friends, yoga moms, charity auctioneers, had started whispering. It didn't take much. A few forwarded emails, 1 or 2 photos uploaded to a shared drive labeled receipts, and suddenly she wasn't welcome at wine night anymore. I never said a word publicly. Didn't have to. Facts do the talking if you let them. One morning, about 2 weeks after the gala, I got a call from Rachel's sister, Lily. Now, Lily and I were never close. She always struck me as the one who knew more than she let on but kept quiet to stay in Rachel's good graces. Ben, she said, I just wanted you to know. I'm sorry. For everything. I didn't know what to say. So I let her talk. She's staying at our parents' place. It's not going well. Dad won't look her in the eye. Mom canceled her bridge club. And Greg? He's vanished. Vanished? Huh? That sounded like someone who finally realized the ground wasn't as solid as he thought. That same night, I drove out to the lake, brought a 6-pack and some firewood, built a small fire and sat there listening to the water brush against the shore. It was cold, but clean, peaceful. Then headlights lit up the trail behind me. I stood, unsure what I'd see. Turned out it was Eli Mason. Eli and I went way back, college roommates, both stubborn as hell. He went into law. I went into real estate. We drifted like most men do, but never completely lost touch. He got out of his truck, tossed me a beer. Heard you kicked a hornet's nest. You could say that. We sat for hours, not talking about much. Then finally he said, you know what your problem was? I raised an eyebrow. You build a home. She was building an exit. That hit harder than I expected. The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. I wasn't just reacting to betrayal. I'd been blind to misalignment. Rachel and I weren't pulling in the same direction. Hell, we weren't even holding the same map. I spent the next few days preparing for the fallout. Greg's wife, Mara, had looped in a few more details. Turns out Greg had been under internal audit even before my reveal. My evidence just added fuel to a fire that was already smoldering. Then came the real kicker. A letter. Handwritten. Sent to my office, no return address. Inside was a short message. I didn't know. I'm sorry. Signed, Kelly. Greg's wife's wife. Apparently, Greg had another family. In another state. A whole second life. And now that life was unraveling too. Rachel had tied herself to a man already on fire. I just happened to bring the gasoline. There's a strange kind of quiet that settles after the storm, when the damage has already been done, and you're just sifting through the wreckage. That's where I found myself, somewhere between relief and exhaustion. The kind of tired that doesn't come from work, but from carrying weight you didn't know was breaking your spine until you finally set it down. Greg's double life detonated his reputation in 2 states. Kelly, the other wife, reached out again. This time, she wasn't apologizing. She was pissed. You gave me the ammo, she said. I'll take it from here. I believed her. Rachel tried to disappear for a while. deleted her socials, didn't answer texts, even from family. Her parents eventually kicked her out after a screaming match with her mother that ended with, "You've embarrassed us." Ouch. I stayed quiet. Not because I was hiding, hell no, but because I was at peace for the first time in years. I spent my mornings at the gym, my evenings fixing up the old cabin I'd inherited from my uncle. There was something healing about ripping out drywall with your bare hands while classic rock blared in the background. One day, Eli stopped by the cabin with coffee and a smirk. "You're really doing it," he said, glancing around at the exposed beams and paint-stained floorboards. "Doing what?" I asked. "Starting over." I nodded. "About damn time." Then he said something that stuck with me. "You lost a liar, but you gained your voice." I didn't reply. I just handed him a hammer. Meanwhile, Monica kept the legal wheels turning. The divorce was now public record. No contests, no alimony thanks to the infidelity clause in our prenup. I kept the house, the savings, even the dog, though Rachel never asked about him. Maybe because she knew he'd already picked his side. A month to the day after the gala, I got a letter from Rachel. Not an email, not a call, a letter. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity has its claws. It read, "Ben, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve understanding. I just want you to know that I see it now, everything I lost. Everything I burned." I thought Greg was an escape. Turns out, he was just a mirror. And I didn't like what I saw. That was it. No excuses. No pleas. Just a woman staring into the crater she helped dig. I folded the letter, slid it back into the envelope, and filed it away in a drawer I rarely open. Not because I wanted to revisit it, but because it reminded me of what survival looks like. Not rage. Not revenge. Clarity. And a damn good reason never to settle for half a life again. 2 months after the letter, I started sleeping with both eyes closed again. The kind of sleep you get when your conscience isn't digging its claws into your ribs. No more late-night pacing. No more checking locks twice. The storm had passed, and all that remained was the rebuilding. I wasn't expecting anything from Rachel anymore. No calls, no sudden redemption arcs. Just silence. And that suited me fine. Then came the wedding invitation. It arrived in a square ivory envelope, hand-addressed. At first, I thought it was a mistake. But no. Inside was a gold-trimmed card. "You're cordially invited to celebrate the union of Gregory Charles Lansing and Rachel Elaine Porter." I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. They were getting married. After everything. After HR investigations, social fallout, 2 imploded families, and enough scandal to fuel a soap opera. They wanted to put a ring on it, wrap it in ribbon, and pretend it was love, not delusion. I stared at the RSVP card for a while. Debated sending it back with "Sorry, I'll be busy not attending the circus." But I didn't. I tossed it in the fireplace and watched it curl into ash. The thing that got me wasn't that they were moving on. It was that they thought I would care. The next day, I called Eli, told him about the invite. He let out a long whistle. "You gonna do anything about it?" I shrugged. Already did. Because the truth was, I'd been waiting for that move. Rachel and Greg had built their relationship on lies, and now they were going to try to dress it up in white lace and centerpieces. Mara, Greg's first wife, was already 10 steps ahead. She sent me a heads up. They're trying to sweep the misconduct under the rug. But I still have the original documents. I gave her one name, a journalist I trusted, someone who owed me a favor. Not tabloid, but real. Investigative. A week later, a quiet little article appeared in the business section. Questionable office romances and the cost of corporate silence. No names. Just enough detail to make people connect the dots. Especially the ones who already knew where to look. Greg's job offer with a tech firm? Pulled. Rachel's bid for a nonprofit board seat? Ghosted. And the wedding? It still happened. But let's just say there were more empty chairs than full ones. I didn't crash it. Didn't send flowers. Didn't even text. I went fishing. Sat on the dock at Flathead Lake with a line in the water and peace in my chest. That's the thing about survival. It doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just hums quietly while the world tries to figure out how you're still smiling. It's funny what survives the fire. When all the smoke clears and the noise dies down, you're left standing in a quiet field full of broken beams and blackened nails. But if you look closely, you'll see what made it through. That's where I found myself. The day after the wedding, I drove back into town. Not for any dramatic reason. No vengeance, no confrontation. Just groceries. And maybe, I guess, to look my past in the eye one last time. I stopped by the hardware store. Ran into a guy I hadn't seen since high school. He didn't ask about Rachel. Just shook my hand and said, "You're looking solid, man. Heard you're building something new." That was the first time I said it out loud. Yeah, I am. That evening, I stood in the shell of my cabin, the new framing nearly done, the insulation ordered, the smell of cut lumber thick in the air. I poured myself a cup of coffee, stood by the window, and watched the wind tug at the tarp over the porch like it was trying to pull me forward. I didn't miss Rachel. I didn't wish her well either. I just let go. Let go of the need to understand. Let go of the rewind button. Let go of the man I had to become to survive it all. That night, I got a text from Eli. "You ever think about writing it all down?" I replied, "Already started." Because some stories don't need to be shouted. They just need to be told. And if there's one thing I've learned through all this, it's that healing isn't a finish line. It's a habit. One quiet choice after another. I kept the flannel. I kept the dog. I kept the land. But most of all, I kept the one thing no one could take away from me again. Me. And that, finally, was enough.